Hello, ID60. We're on to color. So I probably say this in front of every single lecture, but there is a whole class that has to do with color where you learn all the intricacies of color, their harmonies, their psychology, how we affect people when they walk into spaces, and the color is specific. So if you love this lecture, then know that there's a whole class you can take where you'll actually learn more about the manipulation of color and how it affects people. So this lecture is a little longer than the others. So if you need to go grab a cup of coffee, go grab some water, put it on pause, go do that because this one's slightly longer than the other lectures have been. So we are talking about color, psychology, and mood. So how color affects mood. So we're going to be going through the basics of understanding color in residential design, the aspects of color, color harmonies, practical color design tips, color trends in staging versus styling, and color palettes specifically for staging. So, understanding the basics of color in residential design. So, it's really important for you to start using the correct terms when it comes to color. So, there's hue, value, saturation, and all of those are different. So, we're going to talk about those. So hue. Hue is the color itself. So most of us are familiar with the color wheel that we learned in elementary school, which still applies. It's basically the rainbow. So those colors that happen on the color wheel are the base colors. So they're very simple colors. Some of them are primary, some of them you mix them and they become other colors, but for the most part, there are very basic colors. So those are our hues. So they're sort of the family or the parent, I should say, of a color family. So hues refer to the base color. So you can have warm base colors and you can have cool base colors. So warm base colors give the feeling of the sun. So oranges, yellows are warm colors as opposed to blues, purples, greens are really cooler base colors or cool hues because they remind us of water, or sometimes if there's a chill in the air, it'll feel like a little blue. Green reminds us of grass, which is typically sort of cool when you touch it. So cool colors or cool hues, now is the more specific term, versus warm hues. Ooh, sorry about that. So when we start to talk about hue, we are able to make hues either lighter or darker, and we do that by changing their value. So if I add white to a color, I'm tinting it and I'm making it a lighter hue or a lighter value. If I add black to it, I'm making it a darker value. But it's still the family color. So if it's red and I'm adding white to it, it's turning pink. If I add black to it, it's turning like a darker, muddier red, maybe kind of like what's behind me. So value is the darkness or the lightness of the hue or the color. So high value colors are colors that are very light in value, and low value, now I can't even talk, sorry. Low value colors are colors that are darker in hue. So we can change the value by adding white or black, making tint or shades. And some colors just are naturally higher or lower in value. So yellow is a high value pure color, whereas blue is a lower value pure color. So even though no black or white has been added, they are still considered like higher or lower value colors. So this is sort of it looks like a red that has had some black added to it. So you kind of still see the true hue of red, but it's definitely darker or more saturated, as opposed to this is still red, still in the red hue family, but now it has white to it. So it's a tint or a high value color. And then saturation. Saturation is just a brightness. So when I look at this room, as much as I like it, it is very, very, very bright. So this is the saturation, meaning it's as much hue as you could get in there. They're chalking in there, so it almost looks velvety. It has so much color. So it's a pure hue. It could be tinted, it could be a shade, but it is pure value. So it's highly saturated, it's bold. Let's see, do I talk about desaturation? So this is more, let's go back here because I see desaturation is here. So desaturation would sort of be the opposite. So even if I go back to this slide, this red has sort of been desaturated because it's not as bright, right? And you can desaturate in a lot of ways. You can do that by adding black, which again brings that saturation down, or you can start to take it to a neutral, which we'll talk about in another slide. But this is a desaturated red. This is a low value red. This is also a shade of red. But then we have the fully saturated, which like takes it all the way there. So there has been some white added because it's a little pink, but it's also full of color, which makes it fully saturated. So now we have low saturation colors, which means it is muted. So again, it could have black added to it. It's not as bold. So this is a green, but it's definitely had maybe some black added to it or some gray. So it's sort of brought down the vividness of the color, sort of like our dark red room. Oops, sorry, wrong way. So now we are looking at color harmonies. So color harmonies were invented during the Bauhaus movement. If you've had color, or excuse me, I guess color history or even design history. And they took the color wheel and started looking at what happens if you mix and match colors. What does it do? So they came up with these color harmonies that start to evoke mood or feeling in a space. So the first one is monochromatic, meaning you're really just using one color. You're doing different tints. So you could have, like in this case, I'm looking at maybe an orange room, right? An orange hue. So I have added white to tint it, and I've also maybe added a little bit of gray to make more neutral or shaded colors, but basically it's all the same color. Same with this blue room. Everything is blue on blue on blue on blue. And it's actually, for the most part, the same value. Like I see a little bit of value contrast here, but that technically could be because of lighting. For the most part, the blues are the same color. So this one sort of is an equal value of blue, whereas here I'm using an orange, but they're different values that are being layered on each other. So this tends to create a very calm space. There's a trend now for color washing, which uses a lot of monochromatic paint to paint everything exactly the same color. So it lends to a calmness in the room. Then I have complementary colors, and these are colors. This is my color wheel. So this should look familiar to everyone. I have all of my primary, secondary, and intermediate colors. So yellow, blue, and red are my primary, When I mix yellow and red, I get orange. When I mix blue and yellow, I get green. And when I mix blue and red, I get violet. And then the colors in between are just mixing neighbors. So they're called the intermediary colors. So this is sort of the organization of the rainbow and the organization of the color wheel. So if I start to pair these colors up, and I'm looking at the colors that are opposite on my color wheel, it's called a complementary color scheme. So our most famous complementary color scheme is red and green, right? So I'm looking at a red and green room. I tend to not like red and green rooms because they remind me of Christmas. I don't want to be in Christmas all year round. This room does not so bad of a job because it's using sort of a neutralized red, so it's a darker red. It's not so vibrant, and even kind of a maybe higher volume or value of the green. So I have my complementary color scheme. They tend to be very vibrant. They vibrate because the colors, when you are looking across the color wheel, tend to be high and low key colors. So they're opposite. So red would be a higher key color where green is a lower key color. So there's a lot of contrast. The biggest contrast is my high key yellow with my super low key purple. So because there's such a value difference, the rooms tend to be a little bit more busy as opposed to monochromatic where they rest a bit. So here's another complementary color scheme. So again, I think they've done a good job of not using fully saturated oranges. The blue is definitely pretty saturated, but the orange is brought down a little bit, so it helps it rest. And again, because I'm doing this sort of color washing of the blue on the walls, it does rest a little bit, but still a kind of big jump from the blue to the orange. So it's a little vibrant, and they've also sort of brought it down with large neutral prints. So now we have an analogous color scheme, which means that I have three colors directly related on the color wheel. So in this case, I have my violet, my red violet, and my red. So I'm looking at my violet, almost even kind of going close to blue, but I have my darker reds. I have my sort of red violets that are happening in the accessories. And then it's also, in this case, has a lot of white and neutrals that are happening. So these color schemes tend to be relatively tranquil, especially when you get onto this side of the color wheel. It's what a lot of spas are, the greens and the blues. So here is another analogous color scheme. So I have oranges, red oranges, and yellow oranges. So it almost feels monochromatic, but there's a little bit more depth because I'm bringing the red in that's happening in the picture. These are almost some like peaches, and then I have some bright oranges. So again, still, this one I feel is a little vibrant, but also I could see myself kind of chilling in there, being in a vibe. Then we have our triadic color scheme, which means now I am taking three colors that are equally spaced on the color wheel. And so our most famous triadic is the primaries, right? Yellow, blue, and red. And we see those all the time in elementary schools and in kids' coloring books. And that's because those are our three primary colors. We can't mix them to make them. They have to sort of come to us from nature. And those are the first colors that babies' eyes see when they start to see color. Babies are born, they only see black and white. So that's why you'll see some mobiles and things that are black and white. It's supposed to be good for the baby's brain because they can register that black and white. As they get a little older, they start to see the primary colors first. So primary, and I'm not sure this is the best image. And I tried not to have a kid's room because that's too easy, right? But I have sort of this burgundy. I have the blue, and then if you look down at the rug, I have this sort of burnt orange color. So it is triadic. I have three colors equally separated on the color wheel. And then neutrals. So neutrals are always good as a base. So especially when you're dealing with a space that needs to appeal to a lot of people. If you keep a really neutral base, whether it's grays or beiges, and then you put soft accents of color on top of it, it always will work and not be offensive to a group of people. So when you are doing accessorizing, one of the things that's nice is that in this area you can add some really cool pops of color. So when I look at the background of this space, it really is beiges, blacks, and whites, right? The bigger pieces that I'm investing in are neutral, so that when I go into a space, I can add the accessories and they have the colors. So the accessories are more expendable. I'm not spending as much money on them. So if they go out of vogue or if they get damaged, it's easier to replace those. So things like pillows, vases, even books on the table can start to hold those fully saturated colors. Like that pink is really bright. I would not want a sofa that is fully that color, but to see pops of it in the pillow, a pop of it in the book is nice and it adds character to the space. If you are working with black and white and neutrals, you want to make sure that you're sort of balancing it out. So we talked about this idea of balance in terms of shape and form. You can also start to achieve balance with color. So in the smaller image here, I have walls that are black, which typically you wouldn't do in staging. You could absolutely do it in styling and decorating, right? Depending on your client's taste. It's a very dramatic and rich look. But if you don't want the room to be too dark, which I'd say this room is really still bright and almost cheerful, elegant, it's because number one, there's a lot of natural light and it's also flanked by a lot of white. So everything around it is either white or a beige. And when I'm looking at light fixtures and things that are against the wall, it's making them pop. So the light fixture is standing out against the black, the table, the accessories, are all standing out against the black. So the black is really acting as a background. Where in this case, I still want to bring in that elegance of black, but maybe it's a stage, or maybe my client is scared of a black wall. But if you have some big furniture pieces to bring in that black to sort of anchor a seating area, that's great. So here the lamp is black, but notice now it's against this huge white wall that brings in a lot of light. But this becomes an anchor piece in the space, right? I have this sort of black tower almost that's happening if I connect the light and the table together, and then things are working around it that are lighter. And then what's nice about the bigger image is that it has sort of a mid-tone floor. So it's not starkly black and white, but it has some of that mid-tone as well. So also you need to make sure you're considering lighting when you're talking about color. The type of lighting you have will absolutely change the color of your space. So I always recommend that when you're meeting with a client or when you're doing a stage, to take samples with you before you bring everything in, because depending on the lighting, if there's a lot of natural lighting that we see here in this image, it's gonna make the colors feel a little bluer. Whereas if you're using an incandescent light, it's going to make it feel warmer. So of course this isn't static. It varies depending on where you are in the country or even in the world. I worked for a company called Gensler, and we did not me, but one of the designers was doing a hotel. Oh, actually, this was at Concepts 4. It was a hospitality company. We did big hotels. And so they were doing a hotel that was in Dubai. And so we had a particular palette that we wanted to use that were beiges, and it was really pretty, really elegant, because typically things over there were very heavy in color and gold and whatever. So we were trying to be inventive and do this more elegant color palette. I think I was a junior designer on that project at the moment. So the designer went to Dubai, put the fabrics in the space, but because the sun was so bright and so hot in Dubai, everything just washed out. So it was almost like there was nothing. Everything was just white. So we kind of learned a lesson, right? That the reason that they employ so much color is because it's what they need in order to have any color at all. So came back to the drawing board. But I say that to say that all spaces, depending on where the light is coming from. Is it morning light? Is it evening light? How is the sun moving through the space? So if you have the opportunity, definitely take samples, see how they look in the day versus in the night when the light is on. And especially with paint, because it will completely change the look day versus night, because of the color temperature. And again, we have a whole lighting class, which teaches you about color temperature and all of that. But this is, I think, a good example of a image of daylight in the exact same room versus evening when the lights are on. And if you ever have a chance, I'm sure Home Depot, Lowe's, they all have these light booths now. And we actually have one in our classroom if you wanted to come see it. But you can actually take your fabrics and stick them under the different light temperatures to see how much the fabric changes. Kind of a cool experiment. Okay, I said a lot, but consider lighting is the point. And color strategies. So it's good. And again, there are no specific rules to design. A lot of times it is a feeling, but if you need sort of a rule, you're a rule follower. The 60-30-10 rule is a good one. So you're going to incorporate light, dark, and medium colors into a room always. This is what helps give it depth. Right? So if everything is exactly the same, it's going to kind of lay flat. So you want to choose a dominant color or a light color. Depends, a dark color or light color, just depends. But there's going to be one dominant color. And then you want to do shades of it through the furniture. And then you want to have an accent piece. So 60% is a dominant color. The 30% is the secondary color. And then 10% is the accent color. And that also works with textures too. So in this image, it's sort of working with sort of the neutrals being the dominant color, the darker blacks being the medium color, and then the pinks being the accent. But I chose this image even more for the pattern because pattern works the same way. So you want to have maybe a big no pattern area, or you have a huge pattern, then it goes to a medium pattern, and then you have some small pattern. And that also helps a space look interesting and not all the same, and not the patterns not fighting with each other. So, oh, I skipped ahead. I was so busy talking. So you want to make sure that you test your paint swatches. So we sort of talked about this, that lighting is going to be different during different times of the day in different spaces. So in the store, you're matching your paint to your fabric and it's perfect, but you're also under like weird fluorescent lighting, right? You want to make sure that you go into the space it's going to be installed and look at it. And I always buy the little samples, paint them on the wall, and live with it for a little while because, again, it's going to look different on a cloudy day than a sunny day. It's going to look different at night. And I had a friend, and I've done this a couple of times, recommend to me that you even buy a little piece of drywall, maybe have your contractor cut it in squares for you, and then you paint the samples onto the drywall, and then you can take it from room to room if it's going to be used all over to see how it looks in those different rooms. And maybe, even if you thought you were going to use it in the living room, maybe it's perfect for the bedroom. Or if you're doing it exterior, how does it look on one side of the house versus another side of the house, because the sun is different. So always do test strips when painting. So, color trends in residential styling versus staging. So, some of the key differences. So, in residential styling, again, it's your personal home decor. Whereas in home staging, you're really prepping the home for sale. So, it needs to be a little bit more neutral. So, purpose and function for color with residential styling definitely focuses on personal expression so that it can fit the homeowner's taste and lifestyle. So, the colors can be bold and trendy. And I love this space. I love a dark red room. And the blue behind it, I think, really pops. And the wood accents pulling from the kitchen to the dining room chairs. It's pretty cool. Whereas residential styling, you may have a bold accent wall. I'm not even really that excited about that. I really feel like the bold accent should come from accessories so they can be pulled away. And you may again use deeper tones in a stage if that's what your client or your population, I should say, is calling for. So we talk about this later, how you're going to be doing research on the area and who is your client. So color trends again. So for residential styling, the purpose for staging is to appeal to a wider audience. So again, I have this really sort of neutral background. The furniture can be a little bit exciting. I like these chairs that have the fringe on the back. Again, but they're sort of an off-white, so they aren't pulling in any particular color. So again, avoid prioritizing color when you're staging. So trends. So the psychological impact of color of buyers versus of homeowners. So residential styling should really, really, really enhance your client's personality. So I know her from Instagram, and I always like looking at what she has going on in the background, because who she is what she lives in, right? So when I look at her, she's always colorful. She's got the colorful braids, and this is really her brand. So her space really, like her look physically and her space are mirror each other. So a lot of times that's what we're trying to achieve in residential styling and decorating. So staging, again, it should be pretty neutral. As much as possible, you're trying to make spaces look bright and open because that helps them look larger. Ideally, light colors expand, so it makes a space look bigger, whereas darker colors contract, making a space look smaller. So you're really looking for like these high key, bright, vibrant colors and sort of neutrals. With residential styling, residential styling, you can almost do anything you like, right? So you can do seasonal trends. Like I think this pink is kind of cute. Is it going to be great forever? Probably not, right? I think we're coming off of the Barbie age where like this idea of pink interior is new and fresh. Probably won't be forever. So we're going to probably look at this, and right now I think it's kind of nice, but in the future, maybe not. But again, you can experiment and do things with residential styling that you probably couldn't do with staging. So with staging, things should be timeless, right? So I think this is a really lovely, timeless interior. For the most part, beiges and neutrals with black accents. So again, when I look at this idea of the 30-60 rule, it's like for the most part it's neutral. It has the black accents or the darker wood accents that are the step number 2, and then the chairs are really the only color. So even though they're not bright, so when we think about accents, a lot of times we think it needs to be bright pink or bright yellow. Really, it could still just be a medium value neutral that just sort of brings warmth into the space. Or it could be bright, because I like this too. But again, styling reflects the homeowner, so you can use a lot of color, a lot of excitement. I really like this wallpaper that's happening on the ceiling. So we're talking about a lot of movement back into that pink art in the back. Yeah, it's a lot going on. I like it. But again, it's definitely not for staging. Definitely, this is somebody's personality that the designer was honing in on. So room specific staging. So regardless of the room, it really should still feel open. So this is an office, it looks like. Oh, it could be a dining room. But really neutrality is very important. They've used sort of warm red woods that bring out this warmth. The sunlight in this room is really nice. And again, this is sort of an eclectic feel like we learned, excuse me, in the last lecture. I have this really beautiful crown molding, which may or may not be original. I'm not sure, but it sort of lends itself with that warmth. It gives a really nice richness to the space that, other than that, has no traditional elements. It does have some mid-century modern and some contemporary. Um, so dramatic colors. So again, residential styling, you are really honing in on your client. So this is kind of a red, white, and blue idea. Uh, yeah. Again, when it's, I like the space when it's a client's space, you really get to have a lot of fun depending on who your client is. And staging is fun too. I don't want to make you think that it's boring because look how beautiful. So even all white with a few patterns, and it looks like I have a little bit of color in the chair. Beautiful, elegant. Again, I have a vase back here that's giving me a little pop of yellow. So best suggestion is that the color happens in the accessories. Again, beautiful, warm space. I really want to come in and relax. I'm looking at the lighting. There's not a lot of direct lighting, meaning it's ambient lighting, meaning it just makes the room glow. It's not lighting any one specific thing. There's a lot of natural light that's coming in, open environment. So it's really creating just sort of a neutral, nice, comfortable space. Another one, earthy, warm tones is always, I think, nice. They remind us of comfort, right? So this is beautiful. I mean, I feel like I've said it all, but I'm going to keep going. So, earthy, warm tones give us comfort. Everything is very neutral except for my two chairs here in the front. Cool blues and greens sort of lend themselves to tranquility. And it's interesting because this is very neutral. When I look at the books here, there's a little bit of browns, but for the most part, the space is white and neutral. When I add the green in, it gives it a little lift. Like this one, even though the green is very tranquil, very high key, this space for me feels like it has a little bit more lift. It's a little bit more exciting than when I look at this space. Right. So when you think about what color can do, to me, this space feels very I want to lay down, read a book, have a cup of tea. Whereas this space, I'm a little bit more energized. I might want to grab a book and read. I might want to put on a little music. And for the most part, it's because it's wider, right? It's a little bit higher key in color, and the green is also a little higher key in color. Again, I think this is an office. We have that kind of cool black wall backdrop, but the ceiling is pretty massive and it's white. There's still a lot of windows, so the space doesn't feel dark. So spaces that are large and are calling for maybe a super high-end buyer can handle a black wall or a black space. So it's not a never, but it's probably a very few and far between. Black wall for staging. Again, this is a living room and the walls are super white. The artwork is sort of these soft grays and white. The sofa's white. When I look at the pillows, they're these sort of soft, muted pastels. So this feels very fresh to me. Very, I don't know, is there another word for fresh? Very clean, maybe even a little feminine with the gold accents. So again, we're creating this feeling with this very white, open space and these very soft colored pillows. If those pillows had been black, it would be a totally different feel. If those pillows had been earth tone color, totally different feel. So just with those three pillows, they're sort of giving a vibe, right? So the background itself is sort of neutral. But I think because the pillows are these sort of muted pastels, it's much more a feminine idea. So this is more energizing accents. I have sort of neutrals happening on the sofa, but in the art and in the vase and stool, I have these sort of more vibrant golds. So it's much more warm, much more energizing. Sort of similar to our green sofa, except our green sofa felt poppier because the wall behind it was super white. Here, the gray brings it down a little bit, so I'm still kind of happy in this room, but I'm not as effervescent as if this had been a totally white space. Oh, but this one's kind of more white, right? So I feel a difference between this one, which basically is the same colors, except now there's more white all the way through the space, right? And then I have these pops of yellow. So this one feels maybe even a little harder, not as relaxing, um, as opposed to this one because they have that gray wall sort of bringing it down. It also has carpet, so it makes it feel a little quieter, whereas this is all hard surfaces. So it's feeling loud, and the yellow is sort of bringing it up a notch. I do believe this is the same space from someplace else. So I'm still seeing these yellow pillows and um, decorative art on the wall. It's black and white. And we talked about this. So understanding natural versus artificial light, that in light bulbs, you can get all the spectrum of light. So this is representing daylight on this end, and then this is representing incandescent light bulbs. And so again, these colors will change how you see the color that you put in a space. So match color with function. Um, so I guess this one is really talking about a mood. We saw this picture before where the bedroom is really sort of quiet. In this case, it's really kind of the same color scheme, right? But now I have this pattern that's making it more upbeat, more social. I'm just getting maybe one or two additional colors. It's the pattern, it's the vibe, the light levels feel almost the same. So it's really almost color-wise the same space, except now because I have a little bit more color introduced, it has a more uplifting vibe. So local trends. So it is, I really just like this picture. I wanted to throw it in. I love the ceiling. I think this is very cool. So know again your surroundings when you're staging. If this is cow country and people in this area love cows, a cow print on the wall is great, right? And maybe, I don't know where we are. I'm gonna call this abstracted zebra print on the ceiling. So again, I don't know where it is. It still feels super high scale, but I feel like the art on both the wall and the ceiling are very much inspired by animal prints. So again, if we are, I would even say designing for a hotel that is super high end near a safari park, this would be pretty great, right? It's not themey, meaning there's no literal cows on the wall, but it is pulling in the idea of those things. And that is it. So thank you very much for listening to me rant about color. You can tell it's one of my favorite topics. And again, if you ever want to take the color class, we actually have two. Color one is more about this lecture, sort of the two-dimensional aspects of color and how it affects space. Color two is more about the three-dimensional aspects, texture, and how texture and color affect space and form and shape. So if you have any questions, like always, you can let me know. Give me a message in my inbox, and I will see you at the assignment. Bye.